It's over. We've lost. The general's voice broke over the radio. In the desert, soldiers hung their heads, accepting defeat as enemy fire overwhelmed their positions. Dust clouds rose. The ground shook with thunder. A deep engine roar rumbled through the air, heavy as a storm. From the dust cloud, an A-10 Warthog emerged, its gray wings battered and torn. The radio crackled with a determined female voice. Not yet. Hog striking back. The entire front line fell silent. Reina Vasquez was 28 years old, with long brown hair and cold, sharp eyes. She was an A-10 Warthog pilot in an air force that had largely forgotten about her aircraft. At the base, the A-10 was considered an obsolete machine, a second-class aircraft that belonged in museums rather than modern warfare. Young pilots would regularly mock both the plane and its pilots. The Hog's time is over. F-35s are the future. A-10 only know how to shoot dirt. Nobody uses them in modern warfare anymore. Close air support is dead. Precision strikes from high altitude are all that matter now. During briefings, when A-10 deployment was suggested, an officer would smirk. Sending Hogs into battle is like throwing rocks at tanks. Reina remained silent during these discussions, sitting in the corner without arguing back. She knew that defending her aircraft would only invite more ridicule. At night, she would quietly inspect every round of GAU-8 ammunition, whispering to herself, "Thunder still flies." An old maintenance technician later recalled, "I used to see her sitting for hours in the cockpit, like she was talking to the Hog." She believed that machine still had value when everyone else had forgotten. What the other pilots didn't understand was that Reina had chosen the A-10 for reasons that went deeper than aircraft assignment. She had once flown faster, more glamorous jets. She had been destined for glory in air superiority fighters. But, after losing her wingman during a high-speed intercept mission, she had requested transfer to close air support. The A-10 wasn't about personal achievement or breaking records. It was about protecting the soldiers on the ground who had no other defense against overwhelming enemy forces. While other pilots competed for kills and glory, Reina focused on keeping infantry units alive. While they flew high above the battlefield, she flew low enough to see the faces of the people she was protecting. The mockery hurt, but she endured it because she knew something the others didn't. There would come a day when speed and stealth wouldn't matter. There would come a day when raw firepower and the willingness to fly into hell itself would be the only thing standing between victory and defeat. She maintained her aircraft with religious devotion, knowing that every rivet, every round of ammunition, every system check could mean the difference between life and death for soldiers who would never know her name. The other pilots saw an outdated aircraft flown by someone who couldn't handle modern fighters. Reina saw a lifeline for people who had no other hope. She waited patiently for the day when her beliefs would be tested. She had no idea that day would come with such devastating suddenness, or that it would arrive when all hope seemed lost. The desert campaign had gone catastrophically wrong from the very beginning. Intelligence had underestimated enemy strength by a factor of 3. What was supposed to be a quick strike against lightly defended positions had turned into a full-scale battle against a well-prepared enemy with advanced air defense systems. F-16s and F-35s were being locked onto by SAM sites faster than they could engage targets. The sophisticated stealth and speed that made them effective in air superiority roles meant nothing when the enemy had overlapping radar coverage and modern surface-to-air missiles. Casualty reports flooded into headquarters. Aircraft after aircraft was either shot down or forced to abort missions due to missile locks. The advanced fighters that were supposed to dominate the battlefield were being systematically neutralized. In the command tent, General Rossfield stared at a map covered with red markers indicating enemy positions and black markers showing Allied losses. His voice carried the weight of defeat when he keyed the radio. "It's over. We've lost." The order to withdraw echoed across communication channels. Soldiers who had been fighting desperately for hours heard the announcement, and some threw down their weapons in despair. But Reyna was already airborne, her A-10 hidden behind a ridge of sand dunes, engines rumbling as she waited for the right moment. She gripped the flight controls and opened her radio channel. "Not yet." "Hog inbound." The ground shook as her Warthog roared out from behind the dust cloud. Unlike the sleek fighters that had been driven away, the A-10 was built for exactly this kind of punishment. Soldiers looked up in amazement. "A hog? Who's crazy enough to fly that thing in here?" What they witnessed next defied everything they thought they knew about modern air warfare. Reyna dove straight into the heaviest concentration of anti-aircraft fire, her armored cockpit absorbing hits that would have destroyed any other aircraft. The A-10's titanium bathtub around the pilot was designed to survive direct hits from anti-aircraft guns. The distinctive brrrr sound of the Go-8 Avenger cannon echoed across the battlefield as Reyna opened fire on the first SAM site. 30mm rounds tore through the installation like paper. A soldier on the ground later recalled, "I had given up hope when I heard that beautiful sound." The GAU-8 firing was like a symphony of survival. Reyna pulled into a climbing turn, took more hits from ground fire, then rolled into a dive on the second SAM position. Each attack run brought her closer to enemy positions than any fast-moving fighter could survive. But the A-10 wasn't designed to survive by speed or stealth. It was designed to absorb punishment and keep flying, to stay in the fight when other aircraft had to retreat. Within minutes, she had eliminated 3 major SAM sites and created a corridor through which ground forces could advance and other aircraft could operate. The radio came alive with excited chatter. "The hogs are back. SAM sites are down. We've got close air support." General Rossfield, monitoring the situation from headquarters, watched in amazement as the tactical situation reversed completely. The same officers who had mocked the A-10 as obsolete were now requesting immediate close air support from the aircraft they had written off. Reyna continued her attack runs, methodically destroying enemy positions while absorbing damage that would have been fatal to any other aircraft in their inventory. The battlefield that had been lost minutes earlier was suddenly winnable again, all because one pilot in an obsolete aircraft had refused to accept defeat. As Reyna continued her devastating attack runs, destroying enemy positions with surgical precision, radio chatter revealed something that shocked everyone listening. "That's impossible. That's Falcon 9 flying that hog." The name spread through the communication channels like electricity. Everyone in military aviation knew the legend of Falcon 9, but most thought she had disappeared years ago. The truth emerged piece by piece as the battle continued. Reyna had indeed been the most promising Top Gun graduate in recent memory. Her call sign, Falcon 9, had become legendary for reflexes that seemed superhuman and an ability to make impossible maneuvers look routine. She had been destined for the most elite fighter squadrons, marked for rapid promotion, and the kind of career that becomes the stuff of aviation legend. But during a critical escort mission, her wingman had been killed while she was providing cover for a different formation. The guilt of that loss had driven her to request transfer away from elite fighters to close air support. She chose the hog not because she couldn't handle fast jets, one controller observed over the radio, but because she wanted to protect people instead of pursuing glory. As her A-10 circled back for another attack run, demolishing yet another enemy strongpoint, the soldiers on the ground began to understand what they were witnessing. This wasn't just close air support. This was a master pilot using an aircraft that perfectly matched her philosophy. Protection over speed, precision over flash, bringing people home over personal achievement. A staff officer who had mocked the A-10 program watched his radar screen in stunned silence. She's saving the entire division. The tactical controller who coordinated Reyna's attacks later wrote in his report, "She didn't need direction from ground control." Every command that came through the radio was sharp as a blade. The entire system trusted her instincts. What made Reyna's performance even more remarkable was that she was operating completely alone. The other aircraft that had attempted this mission had been part of coordinated packages with electronic warfare support, fighter escorts, and elaborate tactical planning. Reyna was flying solo into the most heavily defended airspace any of them had encountered, with nothing but her skill, her aircraft's legendary durability, and an absolute refusal to let the soldiers below her die. Radio intercepts revealed that enemy forces were calling for reinforcements specifically to deal with the pilot who won't leave. Their carefully planned defensive positions were being systematically destroyed by an aircraft they hadn't even considered a serious threat. As the tide of battle turned decisively in favor of Allied forces, General Rossfield finally understood what he had witnessed. He had been ready to accept defeat against a technologically superior enemy using advanced tactics and modern equipment. But victory had come from a pilot using an aircraft that critics called obsolete, employing the most basic form of air support, flying low, hitting hard, and refusing to quit. A young pilot monitoring the radio frequencies captured the sentiment perfectly. "We've been obsessing over stealth and speed, while Falcon 9 was perfecting the art of just not dying while helping other people." The enemy's sophisticated air defense network, designed to counter modern stealth fighters operating at high altitude, had been overwhelmed by a single pilot willing to fly low enough to take punishment while delivering devastating firepower. By the end of the engagement, Reyna had eliminated 12 major enemy positions, broken the backbone of their air defense network, and created the conditions for a complete tactical reversal. As she headed back to base, her A-10 trailing smoke from multiple hits, but still flying, the radio filled with testimonials from the soldiers she had saved. "If it weren't for that hog pilot, we'd all be dead. I've never seen anything like it. She flew into hell and came back." Falcon 9 just reminded us why the A-10 exists. General Rossfield, who had declared the battle lost just hours earlier, found himself preparing victory reports instead of casualty notifications. The obsolete aircraft and the pilot everyone had forgotten had accomplished what the most advanced fighters in the inventory couldn't manage. They had turned defeat into victory through sheer determination, superior pilot skill, and the willingness to absorb punishment that would have destroyed any other aircraft. The A-10 touched down on the dusty airstrip, smoke still rising from its GAU-8 cannon, and multiple patches of battle damage visible across its gray skin. Reyna climbed out of the cockpit and removed her helmet, her expression calm despite having just saved an entire division from annihilation. Soldiers emerged from their positions, their eyes bright with the realization that they were still alive. The officer who had mocked the A-10 program approached with his head down. "Ma'am, if it weren't for you, this would all be over." General Rossfield walked across the tarmac, saying nothing but offering a crisp military salute that Reyna returned with equal precision. No speeches were needed, no dramatic proclamations or ceremony. The results spoke for themselves. That evening in the mess tent, the chair next to Reyna remained empty. Not because people were avoiding her, but as a silent acknowledgement of the space that exists around someone who has just changed the course of a battle through individual courage. A young pilot approached hesitantly. "Ma'am, I was one of the people saying the A-10 was finished. I was wrong about everything." Rena looked up from her meal. "You weren't wrong about the aircraft's limitations. You were wrong about when those limitations matter." "What do you mean?" "Fast jets are perfect when you can fight the enemy on your terms. But when you have to fight on their terms, when you have to go where they're strongest and stay there until the job is done, you need something that can take punishment and keep fighting." The conversation that followed became legendary among the pilots who witnessed it. Raina didn't boast about her performance or criticize the advanced fighters that had failed to complete the mission. Instead, she talked about the philosophy behind close air support, the willingness to absorb damage so others don't have to, the commitment to staying in the fight when retreating would be safer, the understanding that sometimes the oldest solutions are the most reliable. A maintenance chief who had been working on aircraft for 20 years observed, "I've seen a lot of pilots come back from missions. Most are either celebrating or shaken up." She just looked like she'd done exactly what she expected to do. General Rossfield announced that evening, "Today reminded us that there's still a place for pilots who are willing to fly into the storm instead of around it." For the first time in years, no one at the base made jokes about the A-10 being obsolete. People easily declare it's over when they see everything falling apart. But sometimes, from the dust and chaos, someone dares to stand up and change the entire battlefield. Reina Vasquez didn't need glory or fanfare. Just one moment of bringing the hog back to the sky, and she brought an entire front line back to life. The lesson is clear. Don't dismiss what seems old or outdated, or those who choose to serve quietly. They might be the only thunder left when the storm hits. Sometimes the most valuable things aren't the newest or fastest. Sometimes they're the most reliable, the most determined, the most willing to absorb punishment so others don't have to. Heroes don't always fly the most advanced aircraft. Sometimes they fly the ones that refuse to quit. If you believe that quiet heroes deserve to be remembered, leave a dot in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to SN Quiet Stories to hear more tales like this.